Hello, this is step 3 of redeveloping units from scratch, which is writing the assessment. It's perhaps the one that takes the longest. So this is where we're going to begin the backward design bit that you've heard about. This is where we begin with the end in mind. And this is the thing we're going to start at the end of this unit. We're going to write a unit test that allows your students to prove they have mastered the objectives. And this is what helps us be more efficient and make sure that we are testing exactly what we're supposed to be testing and to the depth and complexity that it needs to be done. So you're going to start with the big picture, and this is a really quick first 2 steps. You're going to go get your visual aid, that colored piece of paper for the unit that has all the standards on it, and you're just really quickly going to read through all of those standards just to get the big picture. You're not going to memorize them because you're going to go through each one of them one by one. So you're going to take each standard and you're going to analyze that standard. You're going to break it down, and they call this unwrapping or unpacking. And I have a document that just leads you right through these steps. So step 3 is unwrap the standard using the standard analysis template in Google. So we're going to go into our Google Drive and we're going to search for standard analysis template. If I can type. And there it is. So like always, I'm going to make a copy. Down here it says show the file location, and that's a good idea. And it's finding it for me, and there it is. It's highlighted. So there's my copy, and I'm going to go ahead and open my copy. I might move it to a nice safe place right there, and then I'm going to change its name to Val's copy of, and I might even put which unit I'm working on, unit 1, whatever it is, standard analysis template, because I'm going to keep this thing. So I'm going to put my name in here, the content, the grade level, and the course. And then I'm going to get that standard. So I go to, let's say I'm 6th grade science teacher, and I go to this particular standard. So develop an argument supported by evidence for how multicellular organisms are organized by varying levels of complexity: cells, tissue, organs, and organ systems. So there's the standard that I'm going to work on first. So I'm going to put it right in the middle because that's the year I'm doing. So, and I would have grade 6 right here. So there is my standard. This is the code that I can copy and put right in here if I want. And so then it asks you to put in the following year and the prior year. Okay, following year, science is different. It has it grouped like this. So if I look for A3, well, there is LS1A3. So it says plan and conduct an investigation. So I'm going to copy, Control C, and I'm going to put that into following year or years. And that's what they're going to do after my level. And then it wants a prior year. So I had to go to K5 Science, and as I look, LS1A3 does not exist in 5th grade. So the one that looks closest to it that tells me the most about my standard is this LS1A1, and I would put that in back in this template here, and I might make a note that there was no A3. Sometimes the best standard is 2 or 3 years before you. That speaks to what you're supposed to be doing. Maybe they don't even cover your standard in the previous year. So you can put that in here and put a little note as to why that's the one that's in there and what grade level it was. Okay, and so now I'm going to do this step right here. I'm going to take the verbs and I'm going to make them yellow. So develop an argument. Develop is the verb, so I'm going to highlight it yellow and then make the nouns blue. What am I developing? An argument. And yes, the argument's going to be all of that stuff. All right. Let's see. Plan is a verb. Well, plan and conduct are both verbs, so I'm going to highlight those yellow. And what am I planning and conducting? An investigation. Okay. So that's going to be blue. Compare and contrast is my 5th grade. So I'm going to make that yellow. Those are verbs. And then what am I comparing and contrasting? The major systems that perform similar functions. Okay, that's just delineation on the major systems. Okay, and so now I can really look at my verbs. So in 5th grade, I was comparing and contrasting the systems. So that's pretty deep. So it's more than identifying the systems. So hopefully they can already, obviously they already know what the major systems are. So because they're comparing and contrasting the ones that perform similar functions for animals. Okay, so that's very specific. So obviously there's some depth going on here. So now the next year, I'm developing an argument. I need evidence for how they're organized by varying levels of complexity from cells to tissues to organ systems. All right, so that's pretty deep. I'm going to do that. Then what am I getting ready to do? What are my students going to be asked to do later? Plan and conduct an investigation to provide evidence that feedback mechanisms maintain homeostasis. So not only are we going to do some argument with evidence, but we're going to do more. We're going to actually carry out an investigation to get that evidence. So you can see the how the complexity is building. So that's why it's really important that I make sure I'm at my level of complexity so that I can bridge the gap between these two things. So that leads me to my learning targets. I know that at the end I'm going to be doing all of this. So that's my last I can statement. So what kinds of things do I need to be able to do? The student need to be able to do as they are working their way up. Um, I, they obviously have to identify the systems, and then once they the systems and their functions, right? Um, okay, and then once I'm sure they can do that, they have to be able to compare and contrast the systems, blah, 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 blah. And then at this point, can I develop an argument? Boy, I don't know, that's a big step. I actually think they're probably going to have to identify some arguments or maybe identify some evidence that supports an argument. So they're just going to say, yeah, this one does, and maybe this one doesn't, etc. And then maybe explain why a certain piece of evidence doesn't support the argument. And then finally, I bet I can develop an argument of my own. So maybe I just copy and paste this whole thing in there because that's what I have to do at that point. So, and then I just look and yeah, that kind of makes like sense. Progressively getting more complex and kind of building. And these are things that I can do formatives on and make sure they can do these things. If not, I might have to go back and do a little backtracking work there. So, all right, and that's all I need to do. So now I know not only do I know what my kids need to do, but I also know some of the things of how to get them there. So I'm going to go back to my next step because there is my analysis. I unwrap the standard using the template. So that was that one. So next, we're going to write our assessment question. Okay, so you're going to ask yourself, what does it look like when a student is successful at this standard? If they can develop an argument that blah, 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 what does that look like? What product do they produce that proves that they can do that particular standard? So I look at the standard, what product would they produce? And then I write a question that elicits that product. So it's pretty deep, but it's really important that you drag your brain through this process because now you are the one that's really intimately familiar with that standard and what kids should be able to do with that standard. Now, at this point, you know what you need, and it is completely appropriate to borrow questions from other people's curriculum at this point, because you know exactly what you need. If you do it prior to dragging yourself through this process, you often get off track. You don't get to the depth or the complexity that is needed, and all of that unwrapping step will be a waste of time. So you really need to drag yourself through this process. And then, I'm not saying we're not all assessment writers, but so this question doesn't have to be used. You just have to really think about what kinds of questions, what should it look like, and then you can go and find one if you're not a great writer, one that maybe has a key already too, right? So also the problem with just going and looking for a question is you get sidetracked. You're like, wait, is that is that the same standard, or oh my gosh, there's a good one for this standard. By this point, you are so honed in on this particular standard that you can really, I mean, not only that, but you have a sample question, so something to compare all those questions to find a really really good one. Or maybe you'll find, which I'm gonna guess you will, knowing you all, that yours is the best one out of all of them, and you'll end up using yours. So, all right, so you're going to do this for every standard in the unit, and when you're done, you have your assessment. Yay! Yes, you can combine multiple standards into one question. That's awesome. If it all will go together in one big product, that's great. That's better yet, perhaps. And then you need to keep the standard analysis for the unit for the final step, because we're going to use it one more time in our last step. So this is the end of writing the assessment. Our last step is step 4, choosing our activities, and then our UOI and our whole unit will be done. So thank you so much. Adios.